From Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Mishpatim, Immutable Laws. As we look at the Parshat Mishpatim, a question enters our mind. Are these the only laws that there could possibly be? Could there be another system that would also be just? Comes Rashi in the very first Rashi and says, Ve'ela Mishpatim, ma'elu misinai, afelu misinai. Just as the laws of the Ten Commandments are the immutable laws of God, so too the laws, the interpersonal laws, the laws of what happens when your fire damages or your ox damages, the pit that you dug in the ground damages something. All these laws are also the immutable laws from Sinai. As we say every day in the Tehillim, in the Psalms, in the Hallelujahs, we say, Lo asachin l'chogoyim shpatim b'alida'um Hallelujah. We thank God that He didn't give laws to anyone, only gave them to the Jewish people. But then we have a problem. Because the Gemara has a discussion about pshara, about making compromises on the laws. You come to court, and then the judges say, well, let's compromise. The Gemara has three opinions. One is that it's asher livtzoah. That what do you mean? How can you possibly make a compromise in the law? You'll just have an adjudication, some sort of a arbitration between the parties. What do you mean? The Torah has given us these beautiful laws. How can you do that? It's robbery. If the law is that I should get $100, then you can't just give me 50. You split it in half. There's another opinion, it's reshut. If you want to, you can. There's another opinion, that's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah livto. It's a mitzvah to say to the parties, come on, before we get into this case, let's adjudicate the case. Let's not according to law. Let's make a pshara. Let's make a compromise. And that indeed is codified in the Code of Jewish Law. That you should always offer the possibility of compromise before the case begins. There's another question: at what stage can you still make a compromise? Now, then the question is, what is this pshara? What does that mean to make a compromise? There's a me'iri that says it's like the word poshrim, lukewarm water. It's not hot, it's not cold. That seems to imply that the pshara, that this compromise you would make would indeed be a compromise. He says, I owe him $100. I say, I don't owe any money. We compromise, perhaps, $50. The Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, explains that no, that's not true at all. He says, pshara is to use a different kind of system. Pshara, compromise, means it's not really compromise 50-50. What it means is, instead of using the law to judge, we use yosher. We use the concept of asita yashar v'atov, concept in Dvarim that we want to do the right thing. Something might be the law, but the right thing is the following. So in other words, for instance, there may be two boats that are coming at the same time. So there's no one reason why one boat should get precedence over the other. But the other one has 1,000 passengers on it, and they need to go somewhere. So maybe we'll be nice, and we'll give them an advantage over the other boat, even though according to the law, there's no particular reason. So Rabbi Soloveitchik, based on his grandfather, Reb Chaim, says that pshara could be, you sit down with the parties and say, okay, let's compromise. The parties say, oh, that sounds great. One of the parties knows he might lose a lot of money, so compromise sounds good. And he says, you owe all the money to the other fellow. He says, what kind of compromise? He says, that's the compromise. It was according to the law, perhaps you wouldn't have owed him all that money. But I think before we start, that al pi yosher, that based on the concept of justice in a higher sense, in a sense of what might be the truly right thing to do, that's what pshara is. It's to do the right thing rather than necessarily the legal thing. But then we run into a problem of, well, then what are the laws? The Rabbi of Slonim says that, when the Jews said Nasav and Ishma in our parsha this week, they said, we'll do and we'll hear. So he says, to do means to do the laws. And to hear means to hear the voice of God of what really is the right thing to do. Now, 99.9% of the time, the law and the Torah obviously is going to be the right thing to do. It's the Emeth, it's the truth. But there is something which Aaron HaKohen referred to as Hayitav B'nei Hashem. And if I do this, would it be right in God's eyes? There's something where you say, would God really want me to do this? And sometimes the law could be trumped, so to speak, by what seems right in their eyes. However, going back to the other position, the Tzvar Hamor says no. He says when you compromise, it should be close to the law. You can't say that the compromise would be totally different than the law. The compromise needs to hew closely to the law. There are cases where we might say, Hakol Kamina Gamandina, that whatever the law was in that city, it was good enough if it worked in that community. There are some laws that might be more fungible like that, like in some of the laws in Bava Basra. Another test case of whether these are the ultimate laws is the case of Goyim, of the Gentile. Let's say a Gentile society was to set itself up according to Torah laws. You say, well, they're Gentiles. The laws don't apply to them. So you say, well, one of the 7 laws of Noah, the Gentiles are obliged to follow, is the idea of dinim, of having a justice system. You say, well, what kind of justice system? So some say, well, a justice system just for the 6 laws of Noah. Ramban says, no, it should be for other cases as well, different adjudications. And there is an opinion brought by something called the Hamalamed. It's Rabbi Yaakov Anatoli, and so 12th century, 13th century. And he said that, no, they should set up all kinds of different laws that they have, whatever laws they can come up with, any kind of laws they can come up with that would be equitable, everyone is the same in front of the law. Any system they come up with would be good. According to that approach, see that the laws have somewhat of an arbitrary notion. So he said, what's the point of having a Torah? Why do we thank God for giving us the laws? Because we want to know the laws. We want to have a system that unifies us, that as one system. And surely, if you have to do a judgment, this is the divine system. It's the best system. It's the mind of God. But it's interesting to ponder, is there an element of arbitrariness when we say that a robber, for instance, has to pay double? What if he paid triple, 1.2, 1.8? Clearly, this is our divine system, and we follow it. But the question is, could there have been another system? Would it also be just? Perhaps when we see with the Gentiles, perhaps there's a notion that there could be such a thing. So we have 2 possibilities. One is that these are the judgments. They are the best. Sometimes we want to add a little element of peace to the judgment, and perhaps we would compromise, but these really are the absolute laws. The other is that perhaps there are 2 systems. There is this justice, this is the ideal system. If you want to use justice, it's the absolute system. But then there's a mixture of peace and justice, 2 different ideas that's sometimes appropriate when you want to compromise, when you want to bring peace between parties. The law is the law. But then, in addition to justice, there's another value called peace. Perhaps sometimes you have to bring the 2 together. We thank God for the laws that we have. They're immutable. They're the Torah's laws. They're God's laws. It's interesting to ponder. Is this the only way it could have been? Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer for today's production. And thank you for joining us here at the Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation for our discussion of this parsha and other parshiot. Join us each week for the discussion of the parshiot and other holidays. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.